The town sat beside a slow, calm river. The wind moved the trees in a soft way, and the leaves made a light sound as they touched. On most Wednesdays, Maya walked to a small cafe near the water. She liked the corner table by the window. She brought her sketchbook and a short pencil, the kind that felt familiar in the hand. She did not draw big scenes. She drew little things, a spoon, a chair leg, the curve of a mug, the chain on the door. It helped her breathe in a steady way. It helped her notice that the world was still here and still kind in small ways. Ethan often came to the same cafe. He was the person the owner called when a chair leg wobbled or a hinge squeaked or a light hummed in a tired way. He did not rush his work. He talked to the owner with respect. He always cleaned the floor when he finished and put the tools back exactly where they belonged. He was the kind of person you trusted with a spare key. He did not need to be the center of a room. He liked quiet progress. He liked to leave a place a little better than he found it. The owner once introduced them over the counter. Maya looked up from her sketchbook. Ethan lifted a hand and smiled a little, not too much. After that, they started to greet each other each week. It was easy to talk about simple things first. The weather, a lost glove someone left near the door, the stray cat that sat on the sun-warmed step outside and half closed its eyes in peace. Ethan asked about Maya's drawings. Maya said she liked to draw common things because they stayed still and did not ask for anything. Ethan said he liked to fix common things for the same reason. One cold afternoon in late autumn, a small storm pushed gray light across the town. The cafe lights blinked, then went dark. The coffee machine sighed and slowed to silence. The owner let out a small sound and reached for candles. Ethan was already moving toward the fuse box. He checked wires, tried a switch, waited, and tried again. The power did not return at once, so the owner set candles on each table. The cafe took on a gentle glow. The air felt warmer even though the heat was not running. Maya drew the candle holder. She drew the tiny quivering flame. Ethan came over to borrow the candle for a minute so he could see inside a dark cabinet. He laughed softly when the wax dripped on his finger. He did not complain. He fixed the cabinet latch and placed the candle back on Maya's table with care. "Does the quiet bother you?" he asked. "It used to," she said. "Tonight it feels like the world is asking us to move slowly." He looked around the room. "Moving slowly suits me," he said. The power did not come back before closing time. The owner decided to end the day early. Ethan offered to stay and help put chairs on tables. Maya stayed to help gather the candles. She cupped her hand around each little flame as she carried them, so no wax would spill. When she reached the sink, she blew them out one by one as if closing small books at the end of a lesson. The cafe grew darker and calmer with each breath. On their way out, they stood for a moment under the awning. The rain was soft and fine, almost like mist. The street lights made a low circle of light on the wet pavement. They could hear the river. It sounded like someone talking in a friendly voice from another room. "I sometimes feel like a borrowed guest in my own life," Maya said, surprising herself. The sentence had sat inside her for a long time. It came out now because the dark felt kind and private, and Ethan was not the sort of person who pushed questions into the air. Ethan did not answer right away. He nodded a little as if the words were a small bird that needed a safe landing place. "I know a bit about that," he said at last. "But I also know how a room changes when someone decides to stay. Even a quiet person changes a room." She looked at him. His voice had a steady tone, the kind that did not jump or fall too fast. It made her feel less like a borrowed guest and more like a person with a name on the door. They said goodnight and walked home in different directions. That night, Maya put her sketchbook on the table and did not draw. She sat and drank warm tea. She thought about the word stay. It was a small word, but it stood upright. It did not lean. The next day, the sky cleared. The river shone like a silver path. Ethan returned to the cafe and fixed the power issue with a new part. He left a note for the owner with details and a fair price. He also left a note for Maya, since he did not know her address and did not want to ask. It was a small card with plain handwriting. It said, "Rain or shine, I'll be here next Wednesday." No pressure, just company. Maya read that note a few times. She placed it between 2 pages in her sketchbook. The card made a small, pleasant bump in the paper when she closed the book, so she always knew it was there. When Wednesday arrived, she woke with a mix of hope and fear. She put on a soft sweater, then changed it for another, then returned to the first. She tied her hair, untied it, and tied it again. She walked to the cafe early. changed her mind at the door and walked past. She made a small circle around the block. Then she came back and went inside. Her heart, which often moved too fast when she tried to choose, settled a little as soon as she saw him there. Ethan was fixing a loose board by the window with a quiet, careful hand. He looked up, saw Maya, and smiled in a way that was not loud. She took the corner table. He finished the board and washed his hands. He did not sit at her table until she raised her eyes and gave a little nod. He carried his mug to the chair across from her. "How's your week?" he asked. "I wrote 3 letters, she said, then stopped as if she had said too much. She never told people about the letters. The town did not know about that part of her. "Letters are a special thing," he said. "They make time hold still long enough to be kind." She breathed out a small laugh. "Do you write letters?" "Not the way I'd like to," he said. "I fix things with my hands. When I try to write, my words feel like chairs with one leg shorter than the others. I keep trying to shim them, but they wobble." She liked that picture. It matched the way she had felt all year. They parted later with a plan to go to the town fair on Saturday. They would look at the quilt display and the carved birds and the jars of homemade jam. They would listen to the band at noon and walk once around the ring where children brought small goats and rabbits to show. It sounded simple and good. On Saturday morning, the sky was high and blue. The air had the first clean bite of cold. Maya stood at her door with her coat on and her bag ready. She put her hand on the doorknob. She froze. A line of old fear moved through her chest the way a shadow crosses a wall when a cloud moves, her mind filled with old what-ifs. What if he asked about her past? What if she could not answer? What if he saw the way she sometimes woke at night with her heart racing, as if she had been running in her sleep? What if her life, with its twists and pauses and quiet corners, felt like too much for someone steady? She sent a short message, "I'm sorry. Can't make it." She held the phone until the screen went dark. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and pressed her hands together. At noon, Ethan stood near the quilt display and read the message again. He closed his eyes for a moment and listened to the music from the bandstand. He thought about pushing for a reason. He decided not to. He bought a jar of peach jam and a small smooth carving of a bird, the kind you could hold in your palm when you needed to remember that patient hands could bring out the shape inside a plain block of wood. He went home and wrote a note on a card. It said, "No worries. I'll be at the cafe on Wednesday. Rain or shine." He put the card in his pocket to give her in person in case she came. She did. On Wednesday, she walked straight to the cafe because the thought of missing another easy, ordinary moment felt heavier than the fear now. She found him tightening a screw on the door closer. He saw her and stood. He handed her the card. She did not read it at once. She looked at him and said, "I am sorry I canceled. Sometimes when someone is kind, I think it is a short loan. I worry it will be taken back with interest." He nodded and sat down. "I understand," he said. "Some people set a timer on their patience. I try not to do that." They drank coffee and shared a small plate of toast with butter and honey. A woman from the shelter came into the cafe to leave a flyer about coat donations. The owner pointed at Ethan and Maya and said, "Ask them. They're good people." The woman laughed and lifted the flyers. "We need volunteers on Saturday," she said. Maya looked at Ethan. He said, "I can carry boxes." Maya said, "I can sort sizes." They both smiled. It felt like they had agreed to build a small step together, not a whole staircase. A step was enough. Morning came with a pale, soft light. The river looked like a sheet of silver cloth laid flat by a careful hand. Ethan reached the cafe early and chose the bench near the water. He set his lunch beside him, not because they would eat now, but because he liked the idea of being ready for a long talk. He did not check his watch. He watched the way light touched the leaves, and he let the quiet make space. Maya walked down the path with slow steps. She wore the same warm hat from the shelter day and carried her sketchbook. When she saw Ethan, her shoulders dropped a little, as if she had been holding them too high all morning. She sat beside him and looked at the river for a moment before she spoke. "I am going to tell you everything," she said. "Not because I think I must, but because I want the air between us to be clean." Ethan nodded once. "I'm here," he said. "Take your time." She opened her sketchbook, not to draw, but to rest her hands on something solid. The pages were full of small, careful lines. She traced the outline of the wooden bird she had drawn last night. Then she began. "Years ago," she said, "my mother became very sick. It was slow at first. We thought it would pass, but it did not. I had a job in another city then. It expected me to be sharp and quick, and I was. I liked the work. I liked the plan I had for myself. I liked the way my calendar looked when it was full of boxes. She smiled a little at the picture in her mind, then let it fade. When my mother needed more help, I came home for a week. Then I stayed one more week. Then I stayed for good. No one asked me to do it. I chose it because I could not imagine doing anything else. I did not make a big statement about it. I just kept waking up in the same room and making the same soup and taking the same notes for the nurse. I told myself it was temporary. Then the months folded into each other like towels. Ethan listened in a quiet way that made room for every word. A small bird hopped near their feet and looked at them with bright eyes as if it knew this bench was safe. I let some parts of my life go without telling anyone why, she said. Friends thought I was being distant. Work thought I was losing interest. I did not correct them. I did not want to explain. And I did not want anyone to try to pull me back when I could not go. So I made my life smaller. I told myself I would make it wide again later. She paused. The river moved with a steady, soft sound. When my mother passed, she said, the house was very quiet. I had been useful every hour. Then I was not needed in the same way, and I did not know how to live without that shape. I could not go back to my old city. The world there felt too fast, and I did not feel like the same person who had left. I took night shifts at a local office to pay the bills. During the day, I slept in short pieces. At night, I wrote letters. Not letters to anyone I knew, but small notes that I left at places where people waited. The bus stop. The laundromat. The shelter. The clinic. Notes that said things like, you are not a burden just because you need help, and you are not too late to start a smaller, kinder plan. I did not sign them. It felt better that way. Ethan breathed out slowly. Those letters helped people, he said. His voice was soft, not full of praise, just honest. They helped me too, she said. I liked the feeling that words could hold steady for someone the way a handrail holds steady on a set of stairs. I liked thinking that a stranger might put one in a pocket and feel less alone for an hour. She turned another page and looked at a sketch of a spoon. The line was clean and quiet. I also had debt, she said. Medical bills, house repairs, little costs that grew teeth if I ignored them. I learned to live small. I bought secondhand clothes. I cooked soups and stews. I did not mind any of that. It was the fear that I minded. The fear that if anyone got close to me, they would see the pile of long days behind me and think I was not a fresh start, but a heavy story. So I kept to myself. I was polite but distant. I said no when people asked for more. I told myself I was protecting them. Maybe I was protecting myself. She folded her hands. When I met you, the air felt easy. That scared me. I liked our Wednesdays, and then I worried I was borrowing comfort I could not pay back. That is why I canceled the fare. It was not about the fare. It was about the old thought that if someone knew my full story, they would leave. She looked at him and gave a small, brave smile. That is what I meant last night when I said, I thought you'd leave when you knew. I do not want to hide. I am tired of hiding. I wanted you to know, so you could choose and I would not have to guess. Ethan sat very still for a few seconds, the way a person sits when a delicate piece of work is in their hands. He looked at the water and then back at her. Thank you, he said. I can hear how long and heavy some days were. I can also hear how steady you were even when you felt small. You say you made your life smaller. I think you made it more true. You gave your time and your hands and your attention to your mother. You wrote letters that made strangers feel seen. You learned carefulness. I like carefulness. Maya blinked and her eyes shone a little. She did not cry. She simply let the words rest on the bench between them like a folded blanket. I do not want to fix this with a speech, Ethan said. I do not think it needs fixing. But I will tell you what I know. When I was younger, I tried to keep a life polished so that no one could see the dents. It was tiring and it wasn't honest. Later, I learned that rooms feel better when the dents are owned and cared for. I like rooms where a chair has been mended, and the repair shows and the chair still holds. Your story is like that to me. It does not make me want to leave. It makes me want to sit down. Maya let out a breath she had not known she was holding. She felt a warmth rise in her chest that was not fear at all. It was relief. He opened the small notebook in his pocket and closed it again, as if to remind himself to keep this simple. What would be helpful this week? He asked. One practical thing. It can be small. She thought for a moment. I have a lamp in my studio that flickers, she said. It is a silly thing. I have been ignoring it. But the flicker makes me feel like the room is not sure about me. Let's look at it, he said. They stood and walked the short block to her studio. It was a narrow room with a good window and a clean table. The lamp stood on a shelf. It gave off an uneven light, steady for a moment, then a quick wink, then steady again as if its thoughts wandered. Ethan unplugged it and checked the socket and the cord. He cleaned a small bit of dust from the switch and fastened a loose part that rattled when he shook it very gently. He replaced the bulb with one from his bag. When he plugged it in again, the light held steady in a calm, even way, like a person who had decided to stand still and breathe. Maya smiled. It looks sure now, she said. Good lamps help, he said, returning the tools to his bag. They do not make the day perfect, but they make it kinder. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from the cafe owner with a photo of the newly fixed chairs and a short line. Your friend brings light. Thank you both. Maya read it aloud. Ethan laughed softly at the word friend, and Maya liked the way it sounded. They made a simple plan. They would keep their Wednesdays, and they would add a small new thing each week. A walk, a soup they cooked together, a visit to the shelter, a letter-writing hour with tea. Nothing urgent, nothing that pulled too hard. Just steps that built a path. That afternoon, a letter came in the mail about an old bill that had been sitting in a drawer. Maya did not slide it under a stack as she used to. She texted Ethan and asked, "Could we look at this together?" He answered, "Yes, bring it to the cafe. We will make a list." They met and read the letter like two people reading a map. They wrote down numbers and dates and names to call. They asked the shelter director about a payment plan. It did not solve everything, but it made the worry smaller and practical. Later, they walked by the river at dusk. Lamps on the bridge lit one by one, making warm circles that touched and overlapped. The water held the light in soft pieces. Maya stopped at the railing and looked out over the slow current. I used to be afraid of dusk, she said. It felt like a door closing. It is also a lamp turning on, Ethan said. She turned to him. I want to say the words again, she said. I thought you'd leave when you knew. He met her eyes, steady and kind. Now I know why I should stay, he said. Your truth is not a warning. It is a map. It tells me where your strong places are and where the steep parts are. I like both. She let the words enter and find a place to live. Then she did something small and brave. She held out her hand. He took it in a way that was gentle and sure. They stood like that for a few minutes, quiet, with the world around them doing ordinary good things. Lights coming on, a dog barking twice, a bus rumbling over the bridge, geese making a line across the sky.